Hey friends, welcome back to No Matter What. If you're new here, my name is Hanna Seymour, and every week we have a conversation talking about how to walk faithfully with Christ, no matter what's going on in your life, how to be the person he's created you to be, no matter what, how to trust in his goodness, no matter what circumstances you're facing. And today, well, before I tell you who we're talking to, I want to read you something that he wrote. It goes like this: the quality of your life is shaped by the quality of the questions you ask of God, of yourself, and others. That was written by our guest today, JR Briggs, in his book, The Art of Asking Better Questions, Pursuing Stronger Relationships, Healthier Leadership, and Deeper Faith. Y'all are going to love JR. You're going to love this conversation. I am positive it's going to encourage you, challenge you, push you along in your relationships and in your faith journey. A few other things just for you to know about JR. He's the founder of Kairos Partnerships, where he does coaching, consulting, and speaking for leaders that are working through unique challenges. He's got over 15 years in pastoral roles. You will feel that in our conversation. He also hosts the Resilient Leaders podcast. And I think some, maybe all of you might want to check that out after hearing him today on No Matter What. And then finally, he has a wife and 2 boys, and he'll share about them a little bit. But let's just dive in. Here's my conversation with JR. Well, JR, welcome to No Matter What. I am thrilled to have you on, and I have so many questions for you.
Well, thanks so much, Hanna. I am looking forward to this, and I'm looking forward to asking you some questions as well.
Well, I appreciate that. I do. Okay, so I don't know if you know this, but I ask the same question at the top of every No Matter What episode, and this is my get to know you question. So I would love to hear, who was JR at 16 years old? What did he love? What did he think his life was going to look like? And then if we put that 16-year-old version of you in a time machine and he arrived today in your life today and he looked around and saw it all, what would he think? Would he be surprised, shocked? Would it all add up?
Well, first off, let me say, great question. You're 1 for 1. You're batting 1,000. I love it. Fantastic, Hanna. At 16, I was really into sports and played soccer, basketball, and baseball. I was really involved in youth group, and my youth pastors were hugely influential in my life, and so deeply grateful for that. Yeah, I was intentional, took my faith seriously. I probably took myself too seriously and probably could have relaxed a little bit. I'm an Enneagram 1, and so I just need to kind of chill out a little bit. And so I know this isn't your question, but I probably would have told myself if I could, dude, chill out. Like, it's okay. But very intentional, striver, type A. And so just needed to probably chill a little bit more, but love sports, love being involved. That was a big part of my life. And I went to a small Christian school, and because it was small and there weren't that many students in classes, but also on the field or the court, I think that's where I developed into being a leader. I think if I went to a very large high school, it'd be like, well, someone else can do it. But when it's so small, it's like, somebody's got to do it. Somebody step up. Okay, I'll do it. And so I'm really grateful for that small environment. And so that's and I wanted to go into ministry. Actually, when I was in 6th grade, I got what I would say it was my call to ministry. And it wasn't hallelujah, chorus, angel, spotlight, it wasn't any of that. It was just, this is the most important thing. And I want to be a part of what's the most important thing. And I think Jesus is calling me to help people care about what's the most important thing in their lives. Wow. And so it wasn't sensational. It was just very specific on my life. Didn't know what form that would take, but believed it would be in the local church, and it has been. And at 16, I knew I would be going on to some sort of schooling that would help equip me for ministry. I think if my 16-year-old self came today, he'd say, wait, you're not a local church pastor right now. And I'd say, yep, because my calling for ministry hasn't changed, but the expression of that calling has changed. And I think that would have probably blown the mind of a 16-year-old of thinking ministry is either missionary or local church pastor, and realizing, my definition and bandwidth of what ministry looked like needed to grow.
Mm-hmm. And probably what you're doing, I mean, maybe it existed at the age of 16, but not, you probably weren't even aware that this was an option.
Yeah, that's
right?
fair. I did not. I'm not even sure I knew the term parachurch ministry.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, yeah, and to realize that, I get a chance to pastor pastors, shepherd shepherds, and lead leaders. That's what I do, but I don't have a local congregation of everybody that meets
Right.
on Sunday morning in the same building. And I view myself as a shepherd. Every day I wake up and I say, Lord, what opportunity do I have to teach, care, shepherd, serve the people around me? And so, so it's a fantastic question, Hannah, and one that I may steal. I won't. I won't plagiarize. I'll give you credit.
No, please take it. My brother-in-law is a country artist, and he has a song called 16 Me, and it came out a few years ago, but my husband listened to it, and he was like, did you start asking that question before he wrote that song, or did he write that song? And I'm like, I think I was asking that question before, but I don't think he knew that. And I mean, it's not that, inventive of a question. Okay. And to learn a little bit more just about your season of life, tell us what's something right now in this season specifically that's bringing you joy, and that's something that is a bigger challenge for you right now.
Yeah. Well, I can't quite say it yet, but there's another book that I'll be writing that I'm very excited about. I'm not at liberty just yet to talk about it, but that is just the juices of creativity are flowing through me as I think about that next project. And you know what that's like. And so it's almost like an electric current runs through my body when there's this book brewing in me, and it's like, I got to get it out. So that's the first one. The other one is my son, I have two sons. My oldest son, 19, he said to me, just plopped on the couch on our porch a week ago, and he said, Dad, I think I'm going to do a triathlon. Do you want to do it with me? And I said, yeah. And then later we're like, ooh. So I guess I'm doing a triathlon next summer. I've done 3 before, but it's been a while. And so I'm looking forward to doing that again with him, but a little terror-sighted, you might say.
Yeah. So that's a joy and a challenge, right? Because I mean, the fact that your 19-year-old son is asking to do something with him, what a joy.
Yes,
that's exactly. I mean, I can only hope that my kids at 19 are like, Mom, let's go. I asked the mom the other day, who we were talking about tattoos, and she doesn't have any tattoos. And I said, if your girls, which she has 4, well, one is 20 now, but 3 teenagers and 1 20-year-old. And I said, if one of your girls said, Mom, let's go get this tattoo together, and the same one, would you do it? She was like, and we were hemming and hawing over it. And I thought, I who knows? I could change my mind 10 years from now, but I think that if one of my teenage or adult kids, 18 and older, said, Mom, let's go get this tat, I would say, if you want a tattoo that matches your mom, like
as long as it's not on the neck, right? Or a teardrop
I guess
or
my
something.
husband would have to approve, I don't love that it's that visible, but I just think that's so fun.
Okay, so let me ask you this question, Hannah.
Okay.
If you could choose your own tattoo, what would be the design? Is there what would you want to get if you had one?
I have 2 tattoos, and I have no tattoos on my body. I have 2 ideas that I would get under the right circumstances, whatever. But haven't been motivated enough to go get it done. The first is, I started years ago. So I like to be a person, I write about biblical celebration in my latest book. So I'm constantly trying to think about how can we be practicing the discipline of celebration in our everyday lives. And a long time ago, I started cheersing with friends, and now you have my kids. Well, they'll cheers their sparkling grape juice or water glasses with me, but we'll cheers different things. And then we always say, to the goodness and glory of God. So that TTGAGOG, my brother-in-law, he was the one that he was like, you got to get that tattooed on your body, but I'm like, that's a lot of letters. And then the other thing would be the blue tassels that were on the priestly robes in scripture, are a symbol of the fact that they belong to the Lord and that they have purpose and they are his reflection. And so I think even though I do love To the Goodness and Glory of God, it's a little simpler. I've thought about getting a blue tassel somewhere on my arm that I see of like, I am the Lord's, I am his ambassador, I
Love it.
am, his child. Anyway, so what about you? And then we have to talk about your book. But
Yeah, that's fine. Well, I actually have two. I have two tattoos. So I'm a big fan of Venn diagrams, and I won't go into. And I wrote a book called The Sacred Overlap about it. So I have a tattoo here of sort of a Venn diagram. Yeah. And then we always talk about living with our arrows pointing out. Most of our culture has the arrows pointing in. They walk in a room and say, "Look at me, I'm amazing." Yeah. But I said, we're called as a family to live with our arrows pointing out, where we walk in the room and say, "Look at you, there you are." Yes. And we look to serve. And so I don't know if you could see it, but on the other side, I have three arrows as a way of saying, like, live with your arrows pointing out. Yes. Most people don't see that, but when I'm brushing my teeth or combing my hair in the morning or at night, like, I'm looking at that to Father, Son, and Spirit, love God, and hope, joy, there's so many metaphors. Yes. And my wife and two kids, but then also love others by living with your arrows out. So those are mine.
That arrows out. That's simpler. We tell our kids a lot, when you walk into a room, you can either say, "Here I am," or you can say, "There you are." And yes. I'm like, I am training you. I want you to be a "there you are" person. And
yes.
Anyway,
we call it APO, like arrows pointing out. Yes. APO. And we would tell our kids when they were little, live APO today. That's your job. Live APO. Okay. Live with your arrows pointing out. So good for you and your husband wanting to train that when they're younger, because the whole world and social media says, "Look at me, look at me." I know. But to say, no. The best thing we can do, Simone Weil, the French philosopher, said, the greatest form of love is attention. And the best we can do is to pay attention to God in the world and then pay attention to others. So good for you. That's you and your husband.
That's so good. Okay. You write over and over in your book, but at the very front, it says the quality of your life. The quality of your life is determined by the quality of the questions you ask God, yourself, and others. So first, I want to know, when did you figure this out? When did you realize that asking a good question was directly related to the quality of your life?
Yeah, it happened over time, including that statement. It took me about 10 months of writing before that one sentence finally hit me. I was like, that's the whole book in one sentence.
It's so good.
But it took years of noticing that. So the first thing is, I had and still have fantastic parents, and they asked great questions, and especially my dad. In fact, the book is dedicated to my father because he modeled so well what it meant to ask, what it looked like to ask great questions. And he would ask questions of my brother and me when we'd be in the car, or, we'd be, washing dishes or throwing the baseball. Like he would just ask questions of meaning and substance. And I thought everybody had a parent that did that until I was around others. I was like, yeah, my dad and he asked me this. And they were like, your dad asked you that question? And I was like, yeah, doesn't your dad? Nope. And I began to realize, wow, like, this is really rare. What a gift. But I also watched him. I watched him interact with others and ask people in the narthex at church or our neighbors or at an event. And I just noticed, wow, this is a really cool conversation. Even as a kid, I could just figure out, this is really cool what I'm listening to and learning. So that was the first thing. And then the second thing, Hanna, is I just began to notice people that lived inspiring lives. And then on the flip side, those that lived really small lives, really uninspiring lives. And I thought, what's the difference between this group of inspiring people and these people over here that live such small lives? And one of the main things I found is, one, the direction of the arrows. Are they pointing in or pointing out? And number two, the questions they asked. And I realized, they ask good questions of themselves, of God, of the world, of others. Other people feel seen and known. And these people over here, they just don't ask any questions. And I thought, that's a pattern. And pattern recognition is a really important tool for me and for other leaders that I work with, to say that's a pattern I need to recognize. And therefore, I need to learn to ask better questions. The last one, this is a long answer to your short question, but the other one was noticing Jesus He is the way, the truth, and the life. But of noticing, he asked over 300 questions recorded in the Gospels.
Yeah.
And no one had ever taught me that. I just took a pen and a red letter edition of my Bible and just began to circle all of the question marks in my NIV Bible and went, whoa, there is a whole world here I need to pay attention to.
Yeah.
And that started a deep dive for me, including my DMin, my Doctor of Ministry. My dissertation was on what can leaders learn about the questions Jesus asked so that we can lead differently. And it just opened up a whole world to me that I thought, this is so important. And I don't think many people are talking about it. So I was watching my dad, difference between inspiring and uninspiring lives, and then Jesus himself, that made me say questions are so important. My job is to elevate their importance and their priority in the days ahead.
That's so good. Will you tell us the story about Christina Rowan? Because I think that, first of all, I've retold that story to someone else. And second of all, I think it's such a good example of how truly asking just one question can literally change everything.
Yes. Yeah. In fact, it was so moving for me, Hanna, that I read that story or heard it somewhere and I just started crying. In fact, I turned to my wife on the couch and I was like, listen to this. This is unbelievable. True story. A handful of years ago, Washington, D.C. in the summer, near Capitol Hill, there was a family. They were having some friends over and just enjoying a backyard barbecue and a party. And an armed robber showed up and put a gun to their head and just said, give me your money. And they grabbed the daughter and put a gun to her head and said, give me your money or I'm gonna shoot. And everyone just panics, as you can only imagine. I mean, I'm reading this story, Hanna, and my heart is pounding just reading the story.
Yeah.
It feels like something made up in a movie, but just to know it really happened. And one of the, Christina just didn't know what to do. And just like, do you want to join us? Do you want something to drink? Do you want to eat something? And it was like, what? And he was so caught off guard by this that he tucked his gun in his pants and he took a sip of wine and he said, wow, that's really good wine. They said, well, here, have some more, take the whole bottle. They just were like stunned, not sure what to do. It's like, wow. And then he asked an unbelievable question. He said, I went to the wrong house. I showed up at the wrong place today.
Wow.
And then he said, can I have a hug? And of course, Christina gives her a hug. And then everybody else just kind of comes up and gives him a hug too. And takes a couple more drinks, sips of good wine and runs out the back. And they said when the police showed up, they said they even found the glass that he was using, the wine glass. Right. And it wasn't even broken, that he had set it there out the back stoop. Wow. And I just thought, man, everybody was stunned by that one question, especially this robber, this burglar. I mean, I would not have, I love questions. I would not have responded that way.
No, never. Sit down and enjoy this really nice glass of wine with us, please, while you hold a gun to our head.
Do you want to enjoy it? Like, come on, you want some? It's like, what? But it just, I think that questions are arresting. And I don't mean that it's kind of interesting, using that in the sense of someone coming in to burglarize a family, but it forces us to think in ways we wouldn't think without a question.
Yeah.
And that is just, I wish I could sit down with Christina and just say, how did you come up with that? Like, was it out of stress? Was it out of fear? Was it out of, just blurted it out? Or was it a very intentional move? Because, here, do you want to have some wine? How about a glass of wine?
Yeah.
I've never thought about asking a burglar that question.
No, can't. And, also cannot say.
But it just shows you one more time the power of what a question can do.
Yeah. Do you have a moment, maybe not quite as dramatic like that in your life, but where a question changed everything for you, or even you asking someone else a question where you just know this just unlocked something completely?
Yeah, I'm really grateful. I mentioned I was part of a youth group. I had two wonderful youth pastors, one who's in Nashville and has been there for about 30 years. But when I growing up in Virginia, he just said, do you want to take Jesus seriously? Because if you do, I'll walk alongside of you. That was a huge one. I had someone else that looked at me and said, do you know you are a leader? And it was the first time somebody ever saw leadership in me. I was in middle school.
Wow.
And I'm incredibly grateful. They said, do you know you're a leader?
Wow.
And then a meaningful question, I had someone else ask me, I think I was shortly out of graduated from college. They said, how did you get so good at that particular thing that you do? It was a bit rhetorical, but it was incredibly affirmative, right? Like, how did you get so good at that as a way of saying, you're really good at that. But I love the way he worded that. How did you get so good at doing that? And I just felt so affirmed and thought, wow, I didn't know I was good at that. Maybe I need to steward that well. And so I really have appreciated that. Another one, and then I want to hear from you as well, Hanna, you answering the same question. But when people say to me, and it's so basic, but it's so rare these days, what about you? Because you and I have been in conversations, and Hanna, you're a good question asker, where you can get through a conversation or coffee or time with a friend or a phone call, and you realize that whole time, I just asked all the questions.
100%.
And I would have loved for them to say, what do you think?
Yep.
How would you answer that?
Yep.
But I'll tell you, and I would imagine you would feel the same, when people do say, well, what about you? Like, how would you answer that? We feel so seen, don't we? We feel so loved and affirmed when someone genuinely asks us and wants to know. So I wasn't trying to like stack the deck here, but what about you?
Well, and
how would you answer that?
I'm going to answer that question, but I'm also going to say, I think that there's a few different reasons why I became a person who asks lots of questions. Kind of like your story. It's like, I watched my parents model this happened. I think a lot of roads led to that for me. But one of the ways I think was a defense mechanism. I didn't really want to talk about myself when I was younger. I was the eldest daughter of a senior pastor at a megachurch in Washington, D.C. And so I just already had a lot of eyes on me all the time. So if I could constantly be getting eyes off of me, and I did genuinely care about wanting other people to feel seen and valued. And so it was like, I don't need to be seen and valued. Like, let's just, and I could still actually feel that creep in, but I definitely, my husband will say, babe, you just ask so many questions and you just keep, like, people don't even have a chance to ask you. And I'm like, that's fair too. But anyway, my best answer to that question, I think, as far as a question that changed your life, so I was probably 16 or 17. So kind of back to my 16-year-old question, my mom, I was sitting at the kitchen table with her and just coming apart. I was really struggling with perfectionism and anxiety and depression and just trying to look perfect on the outside and was crumbling on the inside. And she looked at me and said, do you know that there is nothing you can do that would make God love you more? And do you know that there's nothing you can do that would make God love you less? And I really didn't know that at the time. Like I knew theologically that God loved me, and I knew he had unconditional love for me, but I definitely thought that I could earn his love or approval or earn his disapproval. And yes, we can walk in faithfulness and obedience, or we can sin. And I do think there's consequences to that, but we're still somehow unconditionally loved by him while we were still sinners. Christ died for us. So that set me on a journey that really changed the course of my life. I don't know if I would still be walking with the Lord if I hadn't had that moment to unlearn performance-based Christianity and behavior modification Christianity. So that for me, that was the game changer for me.
That's beautiful. Okay. Thanks for sharing.
I want to talk about, these are things we need to talk about. Practically, how do we become good question askers? What even is a good question? I want to talk about asking God questions, Jesus being the ultimate question asker, and then some practical stuff to help us in our relationships. So
great.
Having
where do
told
you want
you
to start?
my map, what do you want to do, JR? Maybe we talk about just first what makes a good question, and then how do we start practically pushing ourselves? Because I think everyone wants to ask good questions. I think everyone wants to have that skill, but we need to like think about it and practice it and kind of have some steps to do that. So maybe let's start there, and then we'll maybe go more meta with God and
absolutely.
Christ. And
I'm so glad you brought this up, because I've never met anybody that say questions are awful. You should never ask another question the rest of your life. They're destructive. No. I think we all know generally a good intentioned question is really good, but we just say, yeah. So I don't have to convince anybody of that. What I'm trying to do is convince people that it's a higher priority than we've given it in the past.
Yeah.
And so for me, I want to say, okay, if I were to ask your listeners, who's the best question asker there's probably some factors or some characteristics that they've exhibited, or some traits or virtues that they carry, that you can probably find some common threads. One of the things that I've found is the difference between there are 4 essential elements or pillars of asking great questions. There's curiosity, there's wisdom, there's humility, and there's courage. I just don't know if you can ask a good, well-intentioned question without those 4. Now, when I say good, well-intentioned question, because I could ask you one that's really mean, or take a cheap shot, or, put you in your place, or how could you be so stupid? That doesn't have those 4 elements. But a genuine question, a really good question, a thoughtful, incisive question, it has curiosity. I don't know how you ask a question without being curious, number 1. Number 2, it's got to be wise, because I could ask 10,000 different questions, but to know what to ask, when to ask at the right time, for the right reason, to the right people, with the right motive, that takes some wisdom on our part, as well as some humility. Because if I'm asking you a question, Hanna, I'm assuming I don't know the answer, which requires humility on my part to say, I don't know. Well, in other words, will you help me? And then the last one, courage. To admit you don't know in our culture is really difficult. And in other cultures, especially Asian cultures, and others have shared this with me, to admit you don't know often brings shame, even more shame than what we might feel in our culture today here in North America. And so as a result, it takes a ton of courage to be able to ask a question, because I'm saying, I don't know. And you could easily say, how can you not know that? What? You don't know that? And so to put ourselves out there requires some vulnerability and some courage. So I think that to ask a really great question, we really need those 4: curiosity, wisdom, humility, and courage. That's all good. 4 of those are essential pillars.
Yeah. Yeah. So where do we start? Let's just think about our closest relationships right now. We want to have better conversation, and better conversation starts with better questions. So actually, let's do this. I screenshotted something in your book. Okay, this is what I want to do. I want to throw you a question that we ask all the time, and you just give me another option that would be a next level way to ask that question.
Great.
You game?
Great.
Okay.
Yes.
How are you? How's it going? What's up?
Right. And that's common, right? Most people ask that question. And so a better question might be, tell me what's been the highlight of your day thus far? Or in 3 adjectives, how would you describe your day?
Yeah.
Or one of my favorites comes from my dad. So today, are you winning or losing? Oh. And people always follow up with like, well, what do you mean? He goes, I don't know. You tell me.
That's
how do you define it? I don't know. You tell me. Right? So the whole goal is not to catch people or trap people, to have them think beyond we just kind of float through and be like, how are you doing? Fine. How are you? Fine.
Yeah.
And one of the one of the built-in principles of the universe when it comes to questions is, if you ask a generic question, you'll get a generic answer. Totally. But if you ask a more thoughtful, intentional question, you'll get a more thoughtful, intentional answer. It's as predictable as a communist election. And so one of the things that we need to do is just, if we can sharpen and be more intentional, the better we can be. So what's up? How are you? Those are normal. But if you can ask questions like, tell me about the highlight of your day so far. Tell me a couple adjectives that would describe
winning
it.
or losing.
So,
when I was in a hard season, I had a friend who would want to check in, and she would like in the beginning say, "How are you?" And I would say, "I just genuinely can't answer that question. Like, I don't have the mental, emotional capacity to even," because I knew she was genuinely, this wasn't a passing. This is, I want to know how you're doing. And so she just started asking level 1 to 10, give me the number for today.
Great.
And that, and even that would like help me identify, okay, it's a 4.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yesterday was a 2. So that's that 4 is actually a good thing today. Anyway, it just was interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
The next question we always ask people when we meet them is, what do you do for a living? Or where do you work? Or what's your, that's kind of, so what else could we ask, JR?
Sure. Yep. I often like to ask people where they work, but I won't word it that way. I'll say, how do you spend your days 9 to 5, Monday through Friday?
Oh,
I'm basically asking, where do you work?
Good.
But it's almost like a thesaurus kind of thing. Like it's just different words to get at the same question.
But if you ask me that actually is it's a longer answer, but it's easier than when people say like, so what do you do? I'm like, what do I not do? Or I don't know. So anyway, I love that. To me is like a very kind, that's a helpful way to ask that.
Yeah. And another way I like to ask is, how does the world benefit because of how you spend your time at work? So they're going to tell me what they do in the answer, but I'm trying to get them to think beyond. I show up, I sit in front of a computer, or I teach. Okay, but how are you making a difference in the world because of how you spend your time in your job? So kind of human flourishing is what I'm getting at on that. Or how did you arrive at the current job you're in now? And they'll say, my whole life, I always wanted to be in sales. Great.
Yeah.
Or I stumbled into it. I totally don't even know how I ended up in the role I'm in, but I love it. Well, that's a different conversation than I work in sales. I'm a delivery truck driver. I work at a golf course, whatever. Yeah. And so, I just find the conversations are way better if I can just word it just a little bit differently about especially jobs.
Okay, last question for this, little game. Everyone, it's summertime. So I think an easy go-to question that people often ask is like, how's your summer been? So what are some other questions we could ask to have a better conversation than that?
Yeah, I'll say give me a couple of headlines. If it were a newspaper or a website, give me a couple of headlines of the summer so far. It's like youngest went to the hospital with an appendectomy. I'm like, wow, okay. Yikes.
Tell me more.
Or had the trip of a lifetime at the beach with our family. Great. I mean, we're getting there. Or to say, okay, we're halfway through the summer. Are you encouraged or discouraged thus far?
Yeah.
Or what are some things you want to make sure happen before back to school with your kids between now and the remaining part of your summer?
Yes.
Or how is this summer stacked up to previous summers in your family's rhythm? You're just going to get different answers from that.
Yep. Okay. Talk about the role of listening when we ask questions and how that informs the way we respond. Because you just gave us, with that little game, we have at least a dozen new questions in our pocket. But if we just ask that question and we aren't listening, or we don't follow up necessarily in, I don't want to say the right way, but because there's not a right and wrong way, but maybe a better way, we can still kind of kill the conversation, right? So help us there.
Yeah, this is one thing we need to be very careful of. There's a guy named Nadim Ahmad, and Nadim, he said this. He said, the smarter you think you are, the harder it is to listen. And it's so true. And so I think we just have to ask ourselves, how smart do I think I am about this particular topic, right? Or whatever's being discussed.
Yeah.
Because that will change how we show up in a conversation. But there is a researcher named Charles Derber, and this was so fascinating, maybe the most fun thing that I came across in the research for the book. And he's a sociologist at Boston College. I think he's still there. Maybe he's retired. But he launched something called the Attention Interaction Project. And what that is he basically followed people around Boston, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of conversations, and he recorded them of all sorts of people, all sorts of ages, fields, jobs, backgrounds. And he basically found there were two types of conversations. One was he called it a shift response conversation. And the second, he called it a support response conversation. We talked earlier about the arrows pointing in or out. This is where this really shows up. So he noticed that a lot of people were involved in what he called shift responses. This is what he called competitive interaction. So it goes like this. If I were to ask you, so what are you all doing as a family this weekend? And you said, oh, I think we're going to go to the pool and we've got a cookout. A shift response is where I would go and say, oh, our family doesn't like swimming. We're more hiking people.
Cool.
Right?
Yeah.
What did I just do? I just took the spotlight off of you and I turned it on me.
Yeah.
That's a shift response. I shifted away from you and onto me.
Yeah.
But a support response, if I were to say, Hanna, what are you doing this weekend? And you said, our family, we're going to the pool and then going to a cookout. A support response is where I would say, oh, do you go to the pool often? Is this a pool in your backyard? Or is this a swim club you're a part of? Or your friends? Oh, this cookout? Like, that's great. Is it just like with friends and family? Is it your neighborhood? What am I doing? I'm keeping the arrows directed to you. And that's a cooperative interaction. Yeah. Once you know this, Hanna, like I remember reading this in a book. And I remember going, it's almost like I saw the FedEx arrow. You know, once you see the arrow and the FedEx logo, you're like, you can't unsee it anymore. Now I can't unhear it. Everywhere I go, I'm like, oh, there's a support response. Nice job, whoever that person is. Or, ooh, that's a shift response. Ugh. And so you can't unhear it. I think that's one of the best ways we can be better listeners is if we're engaged in conversation, do we turn the spotlight off of the person in front of us and turn it on ourselves? Yeah. Or do we turn the spotlight away from ourselves onto them, or we kept it onto them? My dad calls that stealing the ball when a teammate is dribbling. When we do a shift response, it's like, no. You don't need to steal the ball from your teammate. Right. Let them dribble. And so that's just been just personally in my own life, it just opened up something in me that I'm like, this will help me the rest of my life. That's how we can be better listeners, is be support response people rather than shift response people. Yeah.
That's so good. And I think to make this a shift response, to make this about me, I think my struggle was figuring out how to remain, because my MO or my natural bent would have been support response. But it's like, how do I reveal parts of me or let people know who, because people walk away and they're like, I actually don't know that girl at all. We just talked about myself the whole time. So what are your thoughts on that, JR?
Great. And I'm so glad you brought this up. This goes back to that third pillar of wisdom, because you're right. If all we're doing is asking questions and we never respond, you're right. It's a one-way mirror. We want to be involved with a two-way mirror here, a piece of glass, so that there's both people. We get to see both people. We need a lot of wisdom to know when we interject. It's not just selfishness. It's also connection. Oh, we have a cookout this weekend too. I just created a connection between the two of us of a shared experience. Yes. That's a wonderful thing. I think just being aware of it is the first start, right? And just asking, am I doing more support or am I doing more shift response? Shifting. So that's the first thing, is we need wisdom on that, and awareness. Wisdom and awareness. Number two, I encourage people to play conversational pickleball. And just think about that of I just need to hit the ball over the net. Their job is to hit it back over to mine. And the best relationships we have is when we're hitting the ball back and forth over the net to each other. Yeah. And so that would be my encouragement, either someone who talks too much or someone who doesn't share anything of themselves, is to realize your propensity. You are really good at questions, but you realize, and maybe some of that could be self-protection, or you're curious, which is wonderful, but we're also keeping others from maybe wanting to ask questions who maybe don't think about it as quickly as we do. Yeah. And they just need a beat to think. Yeah, that's good. And so that's good. I always try to shoot for, some people say 50-50. I always say, try to be in 70-30. Support response. Yeah. 70-30, 60-40, just more. It doesn't need to be 90-10. But if everybody in a relationship, the math doesn't add up, but if everybody in a relationship thought 70-30,
Right.
focus on them versus me.
Yes.
That's the root of healthy relationships.
Yes. Okay. So good. We're running out of time so quickly. Okay. We need to talk about how asking good questions, again, determines the quality, I would say, of our relationship with the Lord, of our faith journey. I grew up hearing my dad, who is a phenomenal Bible teacher, say to me over and over, ask the text questions, just berate it with questions. You read a passage and just write down every question you can think of. Now, the scriptures weren't written to answer every single question we have, right? Like but then we get to go through our questions and go, that's not a bad question. Maybe it's a great question, but I actually don't think that that's what this passage is trying to address. That it's not answering that question. So let's look at what questions it does answer. But beyond, and so I think that's a great Bible study technique, is when you're just camp out in a chapter in 4 verses and just ask questions. But beyond thinking about questioning in a Bible study technique format, how does asking questions help grow us in our walk with the Lord, grow us in our, faith journey?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question that requires some context behind it, because many Christians feel very nervous to ask questions. And so, unfortunately, we've picked up some residue along the way that says, if I ask questions, and by the way, I'm not talking about questioning our faith as in like doubting our faith, but even if I ask curious questions, am I allowed to ask that? Does God allow me to ask that? Would my church allow me to ask those just genuine curiosity, I want to learn and know questions? And so there's a little bit of baggage that we just have to name and actually have the courage to overcome on that, because we're not taught to do what your father so wonderfully encouraged you to do, to ask the text questions, because we often see it modeled the opposite. You just bring answers to it. And so I'm really glad that there's some unlearning that I think is becoming more and more acceptable in the last few decades than maybe it has been in the past. The Jewish people do a wonderful job of asking questions about the text. And in the book, I talk about a Jewish practice called chavruta, and chavruta means conversation partner or friendship, where you just are asking questions of the text, not to doubt it, but to learn it and to know it more.
To engage.
And to engage. And I'm with you. Anytime there's a passage, whether it's myself or others, to say, okay, let's write down 10 questions about the passage, just 10. And it's amazing. Some of them you say, yeah, those maybe aren't good questions, but these 3, holy cow, these are unbelievable. And so I think we have permission to ask questions. And I think that may be common for you and me, but there are a lot of Christians that go, I didn't even know I had permission to do that. So I think I would just remind your listeners, we have permission, number one. Why do we have permission? Because God is not scared by our questions. Why is he not scared? Because God, who knows everything throughout the Old Testament, asked a ton of questions.
Yes.
And Jesus in the New Testament, Jesus says, I only do what I see my Father doing. So what does he do? He just asks a bunch of questions like he watched his Father ask, right? And so that's a fun exercise, is to say, well, what questions did God ask? Well, he asked Hagar and Elijah and Sarah and Moses and Joshua and Adam and Eve. He asked Job over 300 questions. In fact, the book of Job has more questions than any other book of our Bible. The Psalms, then you got David asking God a bunch of questions over and over again.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Jesus himself with over 300. And this is the stat that I love to share, Hannah. Jesus was asked over 180 questions. Jesus asked over 300 questions. But of the 180 that he was asked, he only directly answered 5 of them. Indirectly answers 4 of them. The rest he either ignores, changes the subject, tells a story, or launches into another thought.
I mean, and he's kind of a rascal, isn't he? Like a godly rascal. But he's kind of...
Sure. But some of that was his upbringing too, right? Because when he's asked a question, he's trained to ask another question. For us in the West, modern Western thinkers, we go,
Q&A.
I'm more confused. But in that world, that was not only acceptable, but was expected that I would actually respond with a question after being asked a question. So all that to say, we have tons of permission because Jesus models it. He learned it from his Father. Jesus and his Father were not asking questions out of lack of information. So then why did they ask? For connection, for challenge, for participation. It's how we feel loved. It's how we grow.
Yeah.
It's how we're invited in to learn something that answers simply cannot teach us. And so all that to say, there's permission to ask questions. And that's not something that we can just flip that switch.
Right.
That may take some unlearning for us for a while. Lightning bolts will not be sent down from the heavens if we ask a question, an honest, courageous, vulnerable question, longing to know God. That's right. What I love about the Psalms.
That's right.
The Psalms are filled with some rated R questions, actually. And if a man after God's own heart, David, can ask all these questions throughout the Psalms, I think I have permission, and so do you. And that's a beautiful thing when we realize the Psalms, the prayer book of the church, give us capital P permission to ask the God of the universe questions. He can handle it, and he actually loves it because it's better than apathy. It's better than shrugging our shoulders and going, who cares? So what? Yeah. But leaning in going, God, why is this? I don't understand. God, why don't you answer me? He loves that pursuit because we're leaning in.
Well, and it's like he already knows that we're thinking those things, or that we're, even if we haven't allowed ourselves to actually think those things, or, and so it's almost like the actual act of asking God a question is it's naming it and putting it out there. It's like it opens a door to allow God to go, oh, okay, not that God needs allowance, but like, okay, now I can come in and work with you on this. But it's almost like we're trying to, I don't know. I don't know what I'm saying, JR.
Well, I think you're onto something here. I mean, think about when your kids are, when you see a kid in the neighborhood or someone at church, and you're asking this kid who is about to enter third grade, what grade are you going into? I know they're going into third grade. Why do I ask that? It's not for more information. I'm trying to connect with this kid and value this child and see how they're thinking and affirm them as they are about to enter third grade. I think God does that with us. It's not a demeaning, condescending thing. Why would he ask if he already knows? Why do I ask kids questions? But I want them to feel loved and affirmed and listened to. I think that's what God does with us.
And I just always go back to Genesis. Where are you? Of course God knew where they were in the garden. Of course he knew. Yeah. Where are you? I think if we really camped on what that means for how God relates to humans, to his creation, after they have blatantly disobeyed him, and if we understood that, the question, the heart of wanting to engage and connect, of wanting to allow them to, everything that's happening there, I think would radically change the way that we live Christianity, at least in our Western culture, because I just don't think that's how we typically view God. We view God sitting on a big throne with his white hair and beard, with a long robe, his arms crossed, probably mad, wondering why we're mucking it up so badly down here, looking down, Okay, I need to stop talking because I need to wrap this with you, but I have to ask you one more question before my no matter what question. And that is, so going back to David, what I love about David is we see David ask the Lord questions, but then we also see him ask his self questions all the time. Oh, my soul, why are you so downcast? Oh, my soul, what's going on? And you talk about this in your book too. We don't, we should have done like a 4-part, just kidding. But there are just so many sections of your book that I'm like, this is so good. What is one question that you have either asked of the Lord or asked of your own self that really changed something for you?
I think around this idea of desire, of saying like, what is it I really want? I mean, I'm asking myself that, but I'm also asking the Lord that, right? Yeah. And I'm asking, Lord, what do you want? And that's the driving question of obedience. But But I think there are times he wants to, what do you want? Which is interesting because in John's Gospels, that's one of the key questions. There's like 6 key questions that the whole book of John is written around. And the first one is like, what do you want? Or what are you seeking? Is the way some translations have it. And so we see that, what are you seeking? Like, what do you hide and go seek? But like, no, what is it you actually are seeking in life? And so that has been an important question that I didn't think I was allowed to ask. What is it I actually want? And to actually then share that with the Lord has really opened up some new things. I'm in spiritual direction, and that's been something that I've been given permission by my spiritual director to ask regularly. What do you desire? Like, what do you want? Tell the Lord that. I'm like, am I allowed? Yes, you are. Yeah. And so I'm unlearning that just in the last handful of months. This is real-time learning for me. But what is it you're seeking? What is it you want? Has opened up some new avenues and opportunities with the Lord in this season that I haven't had before.
That's so good. I just heard my dad share a story from when he was in seminary, and one of his professors they were just having a one-on-one, and the professor observed and commented to my dad, you think you have all these wants, and you think that if you want it, it's bad, and that's not of the Lord. What if God gave you those wants? What if those wants are God designed, God planted, and how he wants you to express the calling that he's placed on your life, how he wants you to live out his kingdom now on earth as it is in heaven. And I think there's some of us that struggle with that all the time. And then I think there's other of us that are like, what are you talking about? Of course God wants me to have what I want. And we probably both need to meet somewhere in the middle. But okay. Final question. I ask every guest on No Matter What to just finish the sentence. No matter what.
No matter what. Be a person that's committed to being curious and asking questions of God, yourself, and others. Because if we do that over a lifetime, I'm convinced we will never regret it.
So good. So good. Thanks, JR. Thanks for your time today in this. I just so enjoyed this conversation. I'll tell you, normally I feel pretty good. I'm not like usually nervous, but I was like, I feel a little extra stress on asking the question guy.
No, it wasn't.
Oh, no.
And thank you for your questions, Hanna. And it's very clear you're gifted in this area. And questions are a form of hospitality. And they're a form of generosity. And I have felt your hospitality and your generosity and your kindness in those. And so thank you for those gifts. They've been a real gift to me. And keep that up. I know I'm not the only one that receives gifts through your questions. I'm sure your friends and family members and people you interact with and your other guests. So thanks for those gifts. And let's continue to seek the Lord and how he asks questions so that we can grow in our discipleship, but also in our question asking, because everybody wins when we ask better questions. So thank you.
Amen and amen. Well, thanks, JR. And you'll have to come back for your next book. We got to talk, whatever it is, we got to talk about it.
I would love to. I would love to. Thank you so much.
All right, my friends, as y'all know, any info that you need from this episode will be in the show notes. I've got to read this to you. Molly Catherine Johnson posted this. She wrote, every episode is a gift. This is on Apple Podcasts. Hanna is such a breath of fresh air. She is wise, deep, and rooted in truth. All of her guests are so full of wisdom. I have so many takeaways from every episode I listen to. Molly, thank you so much. Your words mean so much to me. Y'all, if you've never rated and reviewed No Matter What on Apple or Spotify or wherever you listen, it means the world to me. And I'm going to read them when you guys start posting them, I think. So you may also know that last week I answered some of your questions. And so after this week, maybe you got some more questions for me. Feel free to DM me those on Instagram, or when you leave a review, you can drop your question in the review. I see every single one. Y'all, it is such a gift to be in your ear. I am humbled and honored that you listen to No Matter What, and I'll be back next week.